The dust clung to everything. It coated my boots, my uniform, and the very air I breathed. Each breath scraped, a coarse reminder of where I was and what I was doing. The sun beat down, relentless, baking the earth into a cracked, unforgiving canvas. Here, there was only duty, only the next patrol, the next mission, the next silent moment of waiting. My focus was a tunnel, narrow and deep, aimed at survival, at protecting the men beside me. Days blurred into weeks, and weeks into months. The rhythm of the desert was my heartbeat now. The distant thump, thump, thump of helicopters, the sharp crack of a rifle, and the low hum of generators. My bunk was a small, metal box, a world away from the life I'd left behind. Or the life I thought I'd left behind. One sweltering afternoon, the air thick with the smell of sand and sweat, my comms crackled. A message. Not from HQ, not from my squad leader. My father. My thumb hovered over the screen, a strange tremor in my hand. He rarely messaged, preferring calls, but calls were a luxury out here, often impossible. I opened it. I stared at the screen. The image burned into my retinas. Her laughter, his arm, the casual intimacy. It wasn't just a divorce. It was a betrayal, a systematic dismantling of my life, executed with cold, calculating precision. My throat tightened. A low, guttural sound escaped my lips, a sound I didn't recognize. It wasn't a cry. It wasn't a sob. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated rage, held in check by years of military discipline. My knuckles whitened as I gripped my rifle. The metallic tang of fear and fury filled my mouth. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to break something, but I didn't. I couldn't. My training kicked in. My mind, honed by countless hours of strategic planning, of analyzing threats and formulating responses, began to work. Son, the text read, stark against the glowing screen, she filed for divorce. The words hung in the air, heavier than the dust. The world outside my little box continued its endless, violent ballet. The distant rat-a-tat-tat of a machine gun, the low, guttural moan of a diesel engine. But inside me, everything went silent. The sounds faded, and the heat vanished. My eyes stared at the screen, unblinking. Divorce. Not a question, not a plea, just a statement of fact. My thumb moved, almost on its own, and I typed a single word, understood. I didn't reply to my father. Not then. I didn't know what to say. He knew me. He knew that word was all he would get. I closed the message and went back to checking my gear, tightening a loose strap on my vest, and wiping the dust from my rifle scope. My hands moved with their usual precision, but my mind was a whirlwind. She didn't call. Not a single call. Not a message. Not a whisper of explanation. Nothing. The silence from her was louder than any explosion I'd ever heard. It was a vacuum, sucking the air from my lungs, leaving me hollow. Then the photos started coming in. Not from her, of course. My buddy Mark, back home, a good man who'd served with me before getting out, started sending them. Little by little. First, just a casual shot of our old street, taken from his car. Then, a few days later, a photo of the house. Our house. The front door was a different color. A bright, obnoxious teal. My stomach twisted. Inside, I knew. She'd already emptied it. Every piece of furniture. Every memory. She hadn't just left. She'd erased. Mark's next message was a video. Short, blurry. It was of a moving truck parked outside the house. My house. My heart hammered against my ribs. The last thing I'd left of her, of us, was being carted away. He sent another photo, a close-up of the truck's logo. A local moving company. She wasn't just leaving. She was taking everything. My mind raced back to the bank accounts. Our joint savings. The money I'd sent home. Every dollar I'd painstakingly squirreled away for our future, for the house, for the life we'd planned. A cold dread seeped into my bones. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the core, that it was all gone. Cleaned out. Every last cent. My mind raced back to the bank accounts. Our joint savings. The money I'd sent home. Every dollar I'd painstakingly squirreled away for our future, for the house, for the life we'd planned. A cold dread seeped into my bones. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the core, that it was all gone. Cleaned out. Every last cent. The next image Mark sent was a gut punch. It was a screenshot from her social media, a picture of her laughing, her head thrown back. And beside her, an arm around her waist, was a man. Not just any man. A man I knew. David. My old high school rival. The one who'd always tried to outdo me. The one who'd always been a little too slick, a little too charming. He was smiling, a smug, triumphant smirk on his face. The caption read, "New Beginnings." I stared at the screen, the image burned into my retinas. Her laughter, his arm, the casual intimacy. It wasn't just a divorce. It was a betrayal, a systematic dismantling of my life, executed with cold, calculating precision. My throat tightened. A low, guttural sound escaped my lips, a sound I didn't recognize. It wasn't a cry. It wasn't a sob. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated rage, held in check by years of military discipline. My knuckles whitened as I gripped my rifle. The metallic tang of fear and fury filled my mouth. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to break something. But I didn't. I couldn't. My training kicked in. My mind, honed by countless hours of strategic planning, of analyzing threats and formulating responses, began to work. That night, in the stifling heat of my bunk, while the others slept, I didn't close my eyes. I pulled out my laptop, the one I use for encrypted comms, and I began to research. Divorce law, property rights, asset protection, every legal loophole, every precedent, every obscure clause. I devoured it all, my mind a sponge, soaking up information. My rage, instead of consuming me, became a fuel, a cold, steady flame that illuminated the path forward. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about strategy. This was about winning. I learned about temporary restraining orders on assets, about equitable distribution, and about the intricacies of marital property versus separate property. I learned about discovery, about subpoenas, and about forensic accounting. The more I read, the clearer my path became. This wasn't a battlefield of bullets and bombs. This was a battlefield of legal documents and courtrooms. And I was going to fight it with the same precision, the same discipline, and the same relentless pursuit of victory that I applied to every mission. I started making calls, hushed conversations late at night, when the satellite connection was strongest. I called my father, not to wallow, but to enlist him. He was a retired judge, a man who understood the law, who understood the system. He listened, his voice quiet, filled with a familiar steel. "Son," he said, "you're not alone in this. Tell me what you need." I told him. I needed the best, the most aggressive, the one who left no stone unturned. He gave me a name, Eleanor Vance. A shark, he called her, a legal predator, my kind of lawyer. The paperwork began. Emails flew back and forth, encrypted and secure. My signature appeared on documents I barely understood but trusted my father and Vance to handle. I felt a strange calm settle over me. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a cold, methodical determination. She thought she'd taken everything. She thought she'd left me broken. She forgot one crucial detail. I was trained to survive betrayal. I was trained to adapt. I was trained to win. My tour ended sooner than expected. A rotation change. I didn't tell her I was coming home. Not a word. I wanted to see her face when she realized what was happening. I wanted to see the surprise, the dawning horror. The flight home was long and arduous. The stale air of the cabin, the endless drone of the engines. I kept to myself, my face impassive, my mind running through scenarios and contingencies. Each bump of turbulence, each shift in the plane's engine was a reminder of the ground I was covering, the distance I was closing. When I landed, the air was crisp and clean, a stark contrast to the dust and heat I'd left behind. My father was waiting, a quiet strength in his eyes. He didn't hug me and didn't say much, just a firm handshake and a nod. He understood. "She's still in the house," he said, his voice low. "With him, bold as brass." A faint smile touched my lips. "Good," I said. "Let them be comfortable." The next morning, I was in Eleanor Vance's office. It was sleek and modern, with a panoramic view of the city. She was exactly as my father described. Sharp eyes, a no-nonsense demeanor, and a mind like a steel trap. "Mr. Davies," she said, her voice cool and precise. "Your father has briefed me. We have everything in motion. The temporary restraining order on assets was granted yesterday. All joint accounts are frozen. Your ex-wife will find herself unable to access a single cent." My lips twitched. "Excellent. The house," she continued, leaning forward, "is a bit more complex. Since you purchased it before marriage, it's primarily your separate property, though she may have a claim to appreciation during the marriage. However, given her actions, we're filing for immediate possession. Her residency there, especially with her new companion, is in violation of several clauses we've identified." "And the car?" I asked. It was a classic muscle car, a gift from my grandfather, something I'd poured years of sweat and money into restoring. She'd always loved driving it, even though it was technically mine. She smiled, a thin, predatory curve of her lips. "Already repossessed. It was registered solely in your name. A simple phone call was all it took. It's sitting in a secure lot right now, waiting for you." The thought of her waking up that morning, finding the accounts empty, the car gone, filled me with a grim satisfaction. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. It was the natural consequence of her actions. She'd gambled, and she'd lost. I didn't go to the house. I didn't call her. I waited. The paperwork, the legal machinery, began to grind. I spent my days in my father's quiet study, reviewing documents, signing affidavits, and preparing for the battle ahead. I went to the gym, running miles, lifting weights, and pouring my pin-up energy into physical exertion. The exhaustion was a welcome balm. Then the phone rang. It was her. Her voice, when she spoke, was tight and strained. "What have you done?" she demanded, her voice rising in pitch. "My card declined. The bank says everything's frozen. And where's the car? Where's my car?" I took a slow, deep breath. "Your car, as you call it, is where it belongs. With me. As for the accounts, they're frozen. Pending divorce proceedings. You know, the ones you filed for." A beat of silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. You can't do this. This is our money. Our house. You're overseas. You don't even know what's going on here." "Oh, I know," I said, my voice flat. "I know exactly what's going on. I've had a front row seat to the entire production. The house, the money, the new beginnings. Very creative." A small, choked sound came from her end. I was lonely. You were gone so long. I thought you wouldn't come back the same. I thought." Her voice trailed off, a pathetic whimper. I let her hang there for a moment, the silence stretching. Then I spoke, my voice cold, devoid of emotion. "You were right. The line went dead." I hung up the phone, a strange sense of finality settling over me. The conversation was over. The game was on. The next few weeks were a blur of legal maneuvers. Eleanor Vance was a force of nature. She dug into every detail, every text message, and every social media post. She found evidence of her frivolous spending and her extravagant trips with David, all paid for with our joint funds. She found proof that David had been living in our house, rent-free, for months. She built a case so airtight it was practically a fortress. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was a sterile, hushed space. The air hummed with unspoken tension. She was there, looking pale, her eyes darting nervously around the room. David was beside her, looking uncomfortable, his usual smugness replaced by a nervous twitch. I sat beside Eleanor, my posture straight, my face calm. I wore a simple suit, impeccably tailored. I looked like a man who was there for business, not for emotional warfare. The proceedings began. Eleanor laid out the facts, cold and hard. She presented the bank statements, the social media posts, and the affidavit from neighbors who had seen David moving in and seen him living openly in our home. She called the moving company representative, who testified about the contents of the truck. She called the bank manager, who confirmed the accounts were emptied. Her lawyer, a flustered, older man, stammered through his objections, trying to paint me as a vengeful, controlling husband. But Eleanor systematically dismantled every argument. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke clearly and concisely. I recounted my time overseas, my dedication to my country, and my surprise at receiving the divorce papers. I spoke about the trust one had placed in her and the plans we had made. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't show anger. I simply stated the facts, letting the truth speak for itself. Mr. Davies, her lawyer asked, his voice dripping with condescension, are you suggesting your wife, who was alone and vulnerable, somehow orchestrated this elaborate scheme to defraud you? I looked him straight in the eye. I am suggesting, counselor, that the evidence speaks for itself. My wife chose to empty our joint accounts, dispose of her marital property, and begin a new relationship while I was serving my country. Her choices, not mine, let us hear. He had no answer. The judge, a stern-faced woman, listened intently, occasionally interjecting with a sharp question, cutting through the legal jargon. She looked at the evidence, and she listened to the testimony. Finally, she delivered her ruling. It was swift and decisive. The house was mine. The savings, what little was left after the freezing order, was mine. She was awarded a minimal sum, a fraction of what she had hoped for, barely enough to cover her lawyer's fees. The car, the dog, and even my childhood guitar, which she'd somehow managed to sell, were ordered to be returned or compensated for. She sat there, stunned, tears welling in her eyes. David put a hesitant hand on her arm, but she shrugged it off. Her lawyer looked defeated. I felt no triumph, no elation, just a quiet sense of closure. I had won, with honor, with proof, with class. I walked out of the courtroom, the sounds of the city rushing back in, the distant honk of a horn, the murmur of traffic, the low, steady hum of everyday life. My father was waiting, a proud smile on his face. Eleanor Vance shook my hand, a rare hint of warmth in her eyes. Mr. Davies, she said, it was a pleasure. You handled yourself admirably. Over the next few months, I rebuilt. I put the house back together, piece by piece, not as it was, but as I wanted it to be. I got my car back, polished and gleaming. The dog, a scruffy terrier mix named Buster, bounded into my arms, his tail wagging furiously, as if he'd never left. He barked and yipped, a joyful sound that filled the silent house. I even tracked down my old guitar, a vintage acoustic, and bought it back. Its familiar woody scent filled the air as I strummed a quiet melody, a low, contented hum rising from my throat. I heard things through the grapevine. She struggled. Without the money, without the house, David, it turned out, wasn't quite so committed. Their new beginnings had crumbled. She'd taken a job she hated, living in a small, cramped apartment. She watched from a distance as my life blossomed. My career took off, and my reputation as a man of integrity solidified. I was stronger, respected, and whole. She broke a soldier's heart. He rebuilt a man. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.